My name is Susanna, this is Stipe, and this is Lea.
Today we'll be talking about climate change.
If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and comment.
So yeah, that's a good outfit. In this video, we will discuss the effects of global climate change, and to do so, it is important to understand the difference between climate and weather. Climate is the long-term characterization of the average weather. It changes over decades, while weather changes on a daily and even hourly basis. Climate is what you expect, but weather is what you get.
Nowadays, global warming is a widely discussed topic, but do you know what it actually means? While many people think of global warming and climate change as synonyms, scientists use climate change when describing the complex shifts now affecting our planet's weather and climate systems. In part because some areas actually get cooler in the short term. Global warming is a term used to describe the long-term rise in the average temperature of the Earth's climate system. It is a major aspect of current climate change and has been demonstrated by direct temperature measurements and by measurements of various effects of the warming. John Ayers points out that global climate change might be the greatest challenge to sustainability. He also claims that this is one of the biggest threats that we face today, and it is most of the time not taken seriously.
To have a better understanding of this topic, we should take a closer look at the global carbon cycle. The global carbon cycle refers to the exchanges of carbon within and between four major reservoirs: the atmosphere, the ocean, land, and fossil fuels. Carbon may be transferred from one reservoir to another in a second. Example of this is the fixation of atmospheric CO2 into sugar through photosynthesis, or over millennia. Example of this is the accumulation of fossil carbon through deposition and digestiveness of organic matter. The processes responsible for sinks of carbon on land and in the sea are reviewed from the perspectives of feedbacks. In system approach, change in the output can be redirected back at the inputs. This may either dampen down the initial change process, that is called negative feedback loop, or amplify and intensify it, that is positive feedback loop. Because of anthropogenic activity, the global carbon cycle is in a state of imbalance.
But what is the concept of Anthropocene? The Anthropocene defines Earth's most recent geological time period as being humans influenced, or anthropogenic, based on overwhelming global evidence that atmospheric, geological, hydrological, biospheric, and other earthly system processes are now altered by humans. Anthropogenic input, or greenhouse gases, to the atmosphere have caused Earth to shift to an unstable, rapidly changing climate. The atmospheric carbon dioxide concentrations increased faster in the 20th century than any natural factor that affects global temperatures have changed over the last 22,000 years.
This is a good place to mention the Stern Report. The Stern Report is an influential report that set out to examine the economic impacts of climate change. Stern and his team set out to examine the economic impacts of climate change itself and the economics of stabilizing greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, plus the policy challenges of creating a low-carbon economy and managing adaptation to a changing climate. Reports such as the Stern Report usually base their research on a business-as-usual scenario. But you might be wondering what a business-as-usual scenario is.
Business-as-usual models assume no major change in climate policy, and therefore continue an increase in atmospheric concentrations of greenhouse gases, contributing to global temperature rise. The consequences of such rapid and dramatic global change are largely unknown, but preliminary estimates suggest that sea level will rise a little over 3 feet by 2100. Weather hazards will become more severe, and by the year of 2100, climate-related deaths will be in the hundreds of millions, and economic losses will be trillions of dollars. According to climate models from the University of Chicago, in the scenario of medium business as usual, in 2020, we are looking at the overflow in the amount of 7.58 pentagram of carbon per year. In case of high business as usual, it would be 8.31, while in the case of low business as usual, it would be 6.31 pentagram of carbon per year.
Climate change encompasses not only rising average temperatures, but also extreme weather events, shifting wildlife populations and habitats, rising seas, and a range of other impacts. All of these changes are emerging as humans continue to add heat-trapping greenhouse gases to the atmosphere, changing the rhythms of climate that all living things have to come to rely on. Estimates of how much carbon dioxide will we emit in the near future range widely. The actual amount of greenhouse gases emitted will depend on the future strength of the global economy. Greenhouse gases emission rates are higher when the economy is strong and under successful of international climate mitigation agreements. All future scenarios produced using climate models, using a wide range of input parameters and various combinations of feedback loops, show global temperatures increasing over the next century. Other projections include sea level rise. Warming causes ice on land to melt and enter the sea, increasing the amount of water in the world's oceans. This can lead to floods in which coastal areas and small islands will be partially or even completely submerged. But submerging is not the only threat caused by sea level rising. It also includes the sanitization of coast aquifers, so these areas cannot be used as agricultural production land anymore. Another concern is that weather events may become more intense because of this rise in global temperature. Natural disasters like hurricanes, flooding, droughts, and heat waves are likely to increase in frequency due to the rise of temperatures. Climate change has already influenced social and economical changes. Recently, environmental degradation became recognized as a major force for human mitigation. An environmental migration may move in response to sudden or long-term environmental changes. Sudden changes include floods, storms, and heat waves, which usually cause temporary, short-distance displacements. On the other hand, slow changes such as droughts, sea level rise, and soil and water salination are most likely to cause permanent migration.
But how does global climate change affect our life in Kufstein? We can see that through the three pillars of sustainability. To the ecological point, due to the global climate change, the chance of droughts is rising and so is the likelihood of forest fires. A lot of the plant life and wildlife might be endangered because of the change in the climate.
From the economic point of view, as winter tourism can be named as one of the main economic sector of Tyrol, one can say that global warming can have a huge impact on our local economy. When global climate change affects the skiing tourism in any kind of way. One of these negative effects can be a decrease in length of the skiing season, but also in fact that there is a big need to purchase artificial snow, which is also extremely cost intensive.
From the social point of view, when talking about the problem of global climate change, one should definitely name the rising number of people dying because of the heat, even in Austria. Studies have shown that people with lower income have a higher chance to be threatened because they usually live in houses with a low quality building stock. This is an example of how global climate change can enter the gap between different social classes.